All right. We are live and recording. So I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us. Today is the first CEO success story in a while. And today we have an extraordinary telecom veteran in Jeff Lytle, who is a billing and tax expert in the telecom world. And he has some fantastic stories to share with us. And for those of you who've been on the CEO Success Story series in the past, you kind of know the format. We talk a little bit. Going to introduce Jeff. He's going to talk a little bit about himself. I will give you the highlights, which you read in the emails or the posts. Jeff has been in telecom longer than some people around here have been alive. He is an Air Force veteran. He's got some interesting Air Force stories, which will give you some of his telecom and IT background. He's a multiple founder and entrepreneur, and his stories are quite fascinating. I always enjoy these interviews because, unlike when you talk about companies and products, we talk about the person. So today we're talking about Jeff. For those, I should say, those that don't know me, I'm Bill Miller. The reason I'm here as a content advisor for the Cloud Voice Alliance, who sponsors these, is back in 2020. I published my book over here. Where is it? Wherever my point is, it's over my left shoulder. But it's all about CEOs. So I interview CEOs and I write about CEOs. And anyway, back to Jeff. Jeff, why don't you take over from here and tell us all about yourself?
I'm Jeff Lytle. I've been doing telecom since 1990, I guess. Is whenever I first got into telecom. Prior to that, I had some other interests, um, but in 1990, some folks needed consulting work. They wanted to look for a new billing solution to build their. They were an MCI reseller here in Oklahoma City, and they wanted to find somebody that would produce bills for them. So I was tasked to go out and find a billing solution. And we looked at three different packages that were available on the market, but the taxes all seemed a little bit lacking on all three packages. And I wanted to get something that did taxes better. And so I proposed to them that we write a new package for their company. Um, and they didn't pay for the package. I still owned that package, but we did the billing for that. So that's how we got started. We were working with a single company, and I was a consultant for them. In about 1993, the partners had some difficulties. It seemed that the CFO, who was the brother in law of the president, absconded with some money, and they got into a tiff over that, and the company went out of business. And so I took my computer program and I went to a company named Myriad Systems. They had high speed laser printers back in the 90s, which were really hard to find. They were actually dot matrix printers, but they could print over 100 pages a minute. So I went there and we commercialized the product for them. And there, the two partners split the sheets. They got sideways with each other and they split the sheets. And part of the way that they came up with the money to fund the buyout of one another was to sell off this division of the company. And we became Sandy Beach's Software in 1997. So that's kind of my entry into this and commercialization of the product. We did it for one company from 1990 to 1993, and in 1993 we commercialized it with Myriad, and then I went on my own in '97, and in 2003 we were an Inc. 500 companies, one of the 500 fastest growing privately owned companies in America. And since then we really haven't done much.
So, so Jeff, one of the things that's interesting is tell everybody how you came up with the name Sandy Beaches Software.
So in 1990, when I was doing the consulting work, I was actually doing consulting work for Fleming Foods, Firestone Tire and Rubber, and Mobile Oil Company, and I was incorporated as Practical Database Solutions. in 1997 when we split off and we started our own company. I went to a graphics illustrator friend of mine from the military that I had known. I'd edited a magazine in the Air Force. I was a journalist for the military, edited a magazine, and Dan was one of my graphics illustrators in the Air Force. Well, I got out of the Air Force in '87, but I kept tabs with him. We're still friends. I went to Dan and I said, Dan, I need a logo for Practical Database Solutions, and Dan said no. So what do you mean no? He said that name sucks. You can't use Practical Database Solutions. That's how you know he's a really good friend because he was just blunt about it. He said, if you come up with a good name for your company, I'll get you a great logo. And so I ran marathons back in that time. And I was running Big Sur at in 1997, and that coast was right down there, and the internet was all brand new, really. Still, I thought I could have this company. I could have a company name, and I could call it anything I wanted to. They would never know that I was in Oklahoma City. I could have an 800 number. I could have a web page. All the consultants, if I was Sandy Beach's software, they would know that I was in someplace warm and tropical, so they'd at least give me a call. So I settled on Sandy Beach's software to call the company, and Dan came up with the logo that you see behind me now. He used that same logo since 1997. So no rebranding necessary.
If you ever do a podcast that gets recorded in video, right? Because most of the podcasts now do video, put a copy on YouTube as well as the audio for people that just listen to audio. You could come up with a really cool Sandy Beach scene.
I could, but we
And
just wear the Hawaiian shirts and put our logo on those. So
yes,
we're good.
I wore my Hawaiian shirt in your honor today. See,
See, I appreciate that. Yep.
that's one of my favorite things. Actually, I have a closet full of Hawaiian shirts from all over the world. Actually,
Okay.
so in all the years of your tax work and your billing software work and your leadership, because you don't call yourself a CEO, but you are, for all
Yes.
intents and purposes, founder and president. I know a couple
Janitor.
of,
Don't forget janitor.
oh yeah,
At
janitor
times
and
times I get to clean. I'm like any small businessman that owns a company. You get to wear a lot of different hats.
see you the mail boy,
Yep.
chief coffee maker, you name it.
Yep.
Anyway, so Jeff, what's the biggest mistake you've made as a leader for Sandy Beach Software? Biggest
Biggest
mistake, and how could you have
mistake.
avoided it?
I guess it was that after we made the Inc. 500 list, I had two young children, and I decided that the company could run itself at that point, and that it really didn't need me fully involved 70 hours a week, that I could probably get away with cutting back my time and hours to 30, 35 hours a week, and everything would go just fine with the company. And I did that probably starting in about 2010, 11, somewhere in that time frame, and was not prepared. It was doing fine, but we were not prepared for the pandemic. And when that hit, we really suffered through that time period because I was not fully engaged with the company. We weren't growing the company, we were maintaining the company. We were writing new code, we were putting out new products, but I really lost focus on what had made us successful, and that was interaction with our customers and making sure. The pandemic then took away our trade shows, and the way we grew the business was by meeting people, going to trade shows, having our customers at those trade shows, them talking to other people about our services. And that all dried up during the pandemic, and we lost about half our business through the pandemic. So that was tough, but we've recovered now, and we're back to where we were at the height of the business in the past. And but I'm putting in the 60, 70 hours, but my kids are gone and they're in college, so I don't regret that. um, it was great to be around my children when they were growing up, to make it to all their sporting events and all their extracurricular activities. That was good.
So as part of the recovery then from that mistake, was it was it just putting in the extra hours, or were there more things that you had to do
We had to
tax
learn social
totally recovered.
media. We didn't understand social media. I had a LinkedIn page what 3 years ago that had I had 10 connections. I mean, that I had had since LinkedIn first came out. And I hadn't done anything with it. I hadn't done any posts. I hadn't tried to connect with anybody. I hadn't. We hadn't taken the time to make sure that people knew that we existed. I'm not one to spend a lot on marketing. We don't advertise in trade publications. We don't buy ads on the internet. We're a word of mouth company. We've always
Mhm.
provided great service. We've always provided great customer care. We've always done the taxes better than anybody else. Any other billing company, I should say. I mean, there's some the tax providers, the guys that have those tax engines. They're real geniuses, but we're tied into them very closely, and we make sure that our customers have that advantage when they come to us. So it's all bundled as part of the package. And navigating that, they come and they go, they sell off. All those things take effort to get done. And those are the things that were missing before that I didn't keep my pulse on all the different
Mhm.
pieces of the industry that we need in order to be successful. Even keeping track of all the different compliance companies that are out there so I can send my customers to the best compliance companies for the best price. I mean, there's 12 different compliance companies that our clients utilize, but you've only heard about two or three of them because they do all the advertising. But the other ones do a fine job as well. And so we try and make
Mhm.
sure that they get the full list of everybody that they could do business with.
Just out of curiosity, how much time do you have to invest on an ongoing basis to continue to learn and stay up to date with all the tax changes, the tax codes, FCC, and all of those kinds of changes that are dynamic in the telecom tax world?
It's not, I really can't put a number on it and say, yeah, we spend 3 hours a week on this. It's not quite like that. And we go to a lot of trade shows. I think I'll be at Telestrategies next month, which is nothing but a telecom tax um, seminar. All the compliance people, the big names, the Marashland Donahues, the CLAs, the Siri Techs, Avalera folks, all those folks are at this conference every year. And I attend about every 5 years. I go to that conference and catch up. We send other employees other years so that they can get some of that information as well. Um, so conferences is the main way that I stay up to date on everything. I get news feeds from several of the law firms that put out those news feeds that talk about what's going on. I read the ones that have to do with telecom. Many of those firms, a lot of their emails or notices are about things outside of telephony. Um, they were talking a lot about the oh where you had to register your company. Um, everybody had to register by a certain date, and then they backed up the date, and then they said you didn't have to do it at all. And I can't remember what it was called, but there were probably 30 different notices. You got to sort through those and just get rid of them because they have nothing to do with what you're doing. But the other information is very useful. They talk about the FCC and they talk about the Universal Service Fund and the Fifth District and what they did and what the Tenth Circuit said, and the fact that it's going off to the Supreme Court. And they all have their opinion about what's going to happen, and it's good to read all those things. None of them actually know what's going to happen, but it's good to get their input because they're closer to it than anyone else. So
Okay.
it's not an exact science keeping up to date.
Okay. So, so my next question is one that's actually on our prepare list. That last one, so everybody knows, is a surprise question for Jeff. So, what do you see as the top trends around AI enabled telecom billing? Because AI is now really permeating everywhere, uh, especially in a lot of our people in the Cloud Voice Alliance who
Yep.
sell, UCAS services, voice over IP. There's so much AI, everyone knows what Bill McLean and Jody Gonzalez are doing with Upon AI.
Yep.
Uh, my house here, we use AI every single day. ChatGPT. I have, Connie and I, we have our own customized GPTs that I use for so many different things. What's going on in your area with AI and billing?
So So IntegraBill has a knowledge base with it. We have about 420 articles in our knowledge base, and those have been consumed by AI. And we are working on it was a large language model AI effort that we're doing that digested all that information. And it's going to be that you can go into our application at any place and type a question about how to do something within IntegraBill and be able to get back an answer on how you would accomplish that test. So, for example, if you want to put out invoices in Spanish, there's a knowledge base article on how you can do that with our software. I want to work with the Chamber of Commerce. What is available to work with the Chamber of Commerce or an affinity billing? So we've consolidated all those. We've come up with a list of about 1,000 frequently asked questions. I don't know, when you get to 1,000 questions, I'm not sure those are all frequently asked, but at any rate, that's what it is. And then we've gone in to try and modify the responses that the AI agent is giving back so that we make sure that we're getting the right answer. The AI agent is able to gauge the percentage correctness of the answer, which I think is a great feature. And anything that has less than a 70% um, guarantee of rightness, that answer then gets sent off to the email to our operations department for them to go in and look at the response that was given and refine it if it needs to give for that particular customer that asked it, to give them a better and then to refine the answer within the knowledge base as well. So that's the
So
first step.
is that
The next step
okay?
then after that, once we get this done, then we want to get it to the point where it can answer a subscriber's questions about their invoice to a for our client. So our client subscribers can use AI to answer the information in IntegraBill about the amount that they do, when it was last due, when their credit card expires, what the last four digits of the credit card are that are on file, all those pieces, what services can I, how do I add another seat? What do I need to do to delete a seat? All those types of things will be in the second phase of our AI implementation, which should be sometime late 2026.
Is that going to be an app form, like for people to use on their mobile devices, or is it just a web browser?
It'll be in a web browser, and we don't have a
Okay.
mobile app yet to for
Okay.
this.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone can just go to the web browser on their phone. I'm
right,
just curious what your thought process was, your strategy, because sometimes I see people moving towards. I mean, you can use ChatGPT or some of the other tools today to create an app for you
right.
with no code.
Yeah, yeah. I shouldn't need any programmers in the near future. I
Yep.
don't know what those guys are going to do for work. I'm just
So
laughing. That's not
so be,
true.
so Jeff, besides AI, what else do you see happening in the billing and telecom space in taxes, of course, for
Yeah,
2025, the rest of the year and beyond?
we've got the USF that still has to get sorted out by the Supreme Court. We don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know if they're going to broaden the base and keep the terms the same. Um, the fact that the Universal Service Fund has tripled in the last 16 years is concerning to everybody. I mean, it's went from 12.9% to what is it, 36.6% this quarter. That's concerning to everybody. Telecom is paying for the build out of the internet. Um, it's a it's got a good mandate. I think this is necessary to connect rural America, to connect the hospitals, libraries, um, all good things, but it's being all done on the back of telecommunications, and the fact that there's three different methodologies to calculate your contribution factor makes it even more confusing. um, that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to change, because something is going to have to change, but it's probably going to get kicked down the road. The Supreme Court's going to kick it back to Congress, I feel. This is me doing what the attorneys do, where they tell you what's going to happen in the future, and everybody has a different crystal ball. Mine's no better than anybody else's, but I believe the Supreme Court's going to say that the Federal Universal Service Fund is a legal fee that can be assessed. They're going to tell Congress to fix the program, and they're going to have to come up with a funding mechanism that's better than the one they have, which probably means expanding the base, I would guess. I would hope that they're going to expand the
Mm.
base so that we can lower the rate.
Well, that would be
That's the
helpful
biggest
for a
one I
lot of
see on
people
the
here.
horizon tax wise for telecom. We're just going to continue to see more and more taxes placed on telecom. We have the voters have voted that you can't raise the sales tax. The voters have voted that you can't raise my property taxes more than X amount. The jurisdictions, the local jurisdictions, state jurisdictions, counties all have to raise money somehow. They're going to raise the price on the 911 service. They've started to implement the 988 service that we're now funding in many states. They're going to there's a baseball tax to build a baseball stadium in one municipality I know that goes on telecom bills. There's
Mm.
18,000 different jurisdictions right now that we can file taxes in if you're doing business in every place in the United States. And any one of those can change, modify, or add taxes.
Wow. That's what I mean. You have to continuously learn with all these things.
Well,
And
I don't have to because that's where the tax engine comes into place. So if I buy
um,
a solid tax engine, it's their responsibility to keep up with this. Now, our customers get notices whenever a tax is changing. They pass those on to us. We pass those on to the tax engine folks, and they implement those changes. So they're getting it from many different places, usually their feeds of what needs to be changed. But it falls on their shoulders to actually keep up with the taxes and what services it applies to. So 175 different tax service types that we can code for any specific telecom service. So that piece of it is always a challenge for us to make sure that we get the tax mapping right on everything that you're selling and that we understand what you're buying and what you're selling to your consumer so that we can optimize the taxes.
okay, very cool. All right. So I hope everybody realizes that there's a lot that goes into Jeff's business. um, and probably many people here do some business with you, so they already know that. So you mentioned social media a little while ago. How are you utilizing LinkedIn and any other social media platform now to benefit your business now that we're in 2025?
It's simply a reaching out to people. Everybody that's I'm linked in with, I've personally met, um, which is kind of nice. They're all in telecom. I do a blog. I think it's the odd numbered Tuesday, every odd numbered Tuesday. So the last one I did, I think, was on the 15th
Okay.
of 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 April. So I don't have to do them every week. Sometimes I have to do three in a month. Um, but it works out fairly well, and we talk about different subjects on the post and try to keep people informed. We're going to more shows than we used to go to. We worked with very, very small telcos for quite a while, and that was twofold. Number one was to help our customer service reps get better at answering questions. The smaller the telecom is, the more difficult they are to service because they don't have the expertise in telecom. They don't understand the taxes. So it really was a great training model for our staff, and part of how we developed our knowledge base was from those questions we got from those small customers. And it helped us to develop our product and to speed up our ability to deliver the end product to our customers, to onboard our customers. We can now onboard customers in 2 weeks, and most of the time other competitors of ours are taking anywhere from 60 to 90 days to onboard a new customer. So we really streamlined that process. Really doesn't have to do with the social media, which was your original question. I better get back to that. On social media, we do the posts. We try and link in with people that we've met, and we just try and give out good information through the LinkedIn posts that we do. We're
Okay.
not doing anything special. We don't have any. We do not do email marketing to folks. We do not do. We still do postcards. This is our social media. We still send out. We have the list of the FCC 499 filer database, 7,800 companies. We have that all done, and we send out postcards. Everybody on that list gets at least one postcard every year.
So you bring up a really interesting point for because a lot of small Cloud Voice Alliance members, for example, don't do marketing. But you know the cliche about what goes around comes around. A lot of the experts today are saying in the email marketing and the marketing agency world that direct mail is coming back. So if you take a
Okay.
look at your email inbox, I mean, I get literally thousands of emails a week and pitches to me because I'm listed as CEO and owner of Beeline Bill Enterprises. So I get all this crap sent to me both on email and on LinkedIn, direct messages.
Right.
And but look at your mailbox for either your business or at home, personal. There's nothing in it. There's like 5 pieces of mail a week
Yep.
because most of us have unsubscribed from, our insurance companies and our 401k companies and we don't get any of that stuff anymore. It's all online. So direct mail happens to be a new, a new old way to get in
Yeah.
front of buyers, believe it or not. And I'm seeing more and more of it. And
Yep.
I occasionally attend events where I see the new numbers that it is happening in some places. And a lot of people here, they can't afford to really hire a marketing agency to do that stuff for them. So you have to do it the old way. You create a postcard, you can go on Vistaprint or, to your local Staples or whatever, and you can have these things printed up and then you can get a bulk mail, send them out, and there you go. And it's a piece that sits in front of them
Yeah.
in the
And the great
office.
thing about our mailings is that we used to print and have we mailed and printed every single invoice that we generated for a year. We still have print and mail service available to our clients if you have a client that wants
Nice.
that physical invoice mailed to them. So we still do that. So we had a relationship with a fulfillment house here in Oklahoma City, and we can print
Yeah.
and mail a postcard to that user for 60 cents. So if we send out 1,000 of them, it costs us $600, and from every 1,000 postcards we sell, we get two new customers.
It's cheaper than advertising on any social platform or Google.
Yep.
Believe me. So it's interesting. So it just validates the point. So that's great, Jeff. Thanks. I didn't expect us to go down that path. But it's really good. So Jeff, what advice would you give to other CEOs or leaders who are struggling with personnel problems, acquiring new customers, and any other day-to-day challenge in this currently polarized political environment in the U.S.?
We don't get involved in politics in our office. We have both parties represented in here, and it's about mutual respect, I guess, when it comes to the personnel. Um, I believe everybody you have a job to do, and as long as you do your job here, I really don't care what happens after hours or what you do in your personal life or who you support or what your personal feelings are. Um, my cousin and I are completely opposite. Okay, he believes that the immigration and borders should be open, and we should allow free people just to come into the country. And he's fully against Trump 100%, and I'm fully for Trump in all disclosure. But we get along great when we get together. We're just cousins. We grew up together. We had the same teachers in high school, graduated in the same graduate. We have so much in common that we don't let the little pieces that we disagree on, we'll listen to each other, and we still defend our point of view, but it doesn't keep us from still being very close and very good friends. And I try and do the same thing with my employees. You're entitled to your opinion. Our hiring practice, and I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast that anybody can listen to, because if there's somebody that wants to come in later on and apply for a job, we give a fifth grade math test to anybody that wants to work here. We've used the same test for 30 years. If you miss more than three on that test, you're not going to get hired here. It's a logic test. Fifth grade math is nothing but logic. And you'd be surprised how many college graduates we have come in and apply for a job that can't miss less than three on a fifth grade math test. There's 30 questions. So you have to get a 90% on the test to come to work here. But that logic, those skills, it's not a psych test. It's not any of those big expensive ones. We got it off the internet 30 years ago. It's no longer out on the internet, and we use that same test for everybody that comes through the door. We
That's
used to
amazing.
grade it in front of the people. I had one guy get really upset and tell me that I didn't understand math and that he used algebraic logic on that answer and it was completely right. And I didn't know what I was talking about. And I thought he was going to punch me. So we quit grading them in front of the people. Um, and just do it after they leave the interview. But it's amazing how many people can interview very well and miss half the questions on a fifth grade math test. And they would never work out. We
Wow.
used the test the first 6 years. We just gave the test out, and then we looked at the results of the people that made it here, that did well, that flourished here, compared to the people. We found a correlation between how they did on this test before we actually used it as part of the process to pick our employees.
I have to admit that in 5 decades of technology and hiring and firing for the last 40 years of that 50, I have never heard anyone that used the fifth grade math test as part of an interview process. I've heard of a lot of different things, but never heard that one. That is a first. I think that's fantastic that you found something that works. And it's a lot like writing. I'm in several writing cohorts because my second book is with the editor now, so that's another CEO book. But what's interesting is when you go through some of the different writing tools that help you in various things, fifth and sixth grade writing level is what a lot of tools and coaches, writing coaches, suggest. Now, unless you're
That's
writing certain types of fiction, fantasy, sci-fi stuff, but when you're writing business books, which is the groups that I'm in, uh, they typically say you shouldn't write at higher than a fifth or sixth grade level
right. In the
for writing
military,
because people, yeah, they just don't understand a lot of the big words.
when I was a journalist in the military and edited a magazine there, we were required to write at a seventh grade. We couldn't write above a seventh grade level. We had to, and you would count the number of words, count the number of syllables in the sentence, figure out the reading level that you're at, and you'd have to dumb it down sometimes to make sure that it was comprehensible to everybody that was serving in the Air Force.
Well,
So, yep,
I believe that seventh grade though is more than what the
yeah,
writers are telling me to write.
yeah, I understand.
so, so Jeff, what advice would the Jeff of 2025 give to the Jeff of 1997?
Nothing beats hard work. Um, it staying focused, setting goals is very important. Um, Making sure you stick to your plan your plan, and then stick to that plan. Um, get buy-in from the people you're working with. Um, be close to your employees at the office, but don't try and follow what they do outside the office. Um, and
Okay.
just work toward that common goal. That's how we made the Inc. 500. Was we everybody had a placard at their bulletin board beside their desk that said "Make the list," and that's all it said was "Make the list." But everybody knew that was to make the Inc. 500. Now it's the Inc. 5,000 list. I'm not sure if it's nearly as prestigious as it used to be. I think we sold out to the marketing team and gave them 5,000 people instead of 500 to deal with. But it was a common goal, and so we were all focused on that and working towards that. Our country
So,
needs a focused goal like that, in my mind,
yeah.
like we had
So
back in
it's
the '60s.
so what's interesting is I call that a mantra. In my vernacular, that's called a mantra. I think every leader should have a mantra. And if you lead a company, you should have that. Some people call it a vision or a mission. I call it a mantra. call it a mantra because it's different than a vision or a mission. That particular example you gave is perfect because people looked at that every single day. That's the goal. It's a common goal. Doesn't matter what you do, how you do it. They all saw the same message. And that's consistent across the company. And I think that's a great message to give. Again, I call it a mantra. I got it many years ago myself. The use of a mantra from Guy Kawasaki, who used that in the early days of Apple, and he does it now with Canva. But it's really kind of interesting and a great leadership approach. So I fully support that. I think it's great. I wanted to ask a question before we get to the last question, just so everybody knows. There's one more question. Now there's going to be two, and then a lightning round, and so we'll wrap in another few minutes. Really, there's a couple of stories that you had shared with me about Air Force, about when you went in, what you became, how you became a journalist, how you got into IT. Could you do a quick couple of minutes on that Air Force
Sure.
story? Because that's what shaped you on what you became.
That's a lot of it. A lot of it goes back to my childhood too. I mean, I've had a I went to work in a factory at 15 years old in a dairy, and those were all great lessons working in that factory. I had some really good leaders. I had a paper route before that. I had a lot of business people on my paper route. I had a bank president give me a stock certificate when I was 12 years old as a tip for delivering newspapers to him for a year. I was really surrounded by a lot of very good people in my community. That background helped out a lot. But when I went into the Air Force, I went in guaranteed with a job of computer technician to repair and fix computers for the Air Force. 3 weeks before I graduated from basic training, I got called into some personnel office someplace, and I went there, and they told me that they weren't going to be able to give me my guaranteed job. I had an option, had two options actually. I could get out of the Air Force after 3 weeks with an other than honorable discharge, and I could go back home to Ohio and go back to work at the dairy again, um, working there. They had already shaved all my hair off my head. This was 1983. I didn't really think I could. My hometown's like 10,000 people. Be really hard to explain why you're home after 3 weeks in the Air Force. They knew that I had signed up for 4 years. That would have been really hard to explain. Or I could take a job as a public affairs specialist. Public affairs specialists train in California. Um, Now I can't remember the name of the town, but it's someplace out in California. It's a DoD school, and I would be there for 6 weeks to get training to be a public affairs specialist. So I signed on the dotted line and I became a public affairs specialist. A couple weeks later, toward the end of basic training, the drill instructor called my name and I went up to get my orders, and he was laughing because my orders were to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indianapolis, Indiana. Not exactly the same as California. I was pretty disappointed, but I was going to be there in May for the Indianapolis 500. I was from Ohio, so I was close to home. So what the heck, I'll go do that. So I became a journalist. Public affairs, they told me I'd be given tours, but really I became a writer. I struggled with that. I have dyslexia, so that was a real challenge for me to become a journalist and to edit a magazine. But hard work and perseverance, and you stick to it. We won a couple awards in the Air Force for our publications. But while I was in the Air Force, I got stationed at Tinker Air Force Base here in Oklahoma City. And while in there, my roommates were programmers. So that job that I had wanted, either technician or programming or something, my roommates were doing that same job. And so I would hang out with them in the evenings and go to the testing tubes, and they were programming for the AWACS aircraft, and I got pretty good in there at testing stuff. And then I wrote some code, and somebody thought I was pretty good at it. One of the civilians that was over us, and he told the general that I was they were wasting my time just letting me write for the magazine. I should be writing code, and they sent me off to a school to learn Jovial, which is a military language. And Then I got out of the Air Force and became a programmer. So the Air Force trained me, but it's not in my MOS. It's not part of my job description. It was just something that I enjoyed and I did very well at. So that's that Air Force story.
I think it's a fascinating story. There were a couple parts of that too that are just stick out, and you actually answered. I think one of the things that you were going to share, but what's one factoid that nobody really knows about you that you're willing to share? And you kind of touched on it a minute ago.
Well, that one, the dyslexia, but also the fact that I've worked every day. I took two. When I got out of the Air Force, I was unemployed for 2 weeks. Other than that 2 week time period, I've worked every day of my life since I was 15 years, 3 months old. So I worked in that dairy, starting there. I was mowing their yard. I was mowing the. It was a dairy that processed milk and ice cream and dairy products. And I was mowing their yard, and somebody got injured that was running one of the pint machines, which fills up pints, I'm sorry, but paper pints of milk. Got injured, and they pulled me in from mowing the yard and said, "We need you to run this piece of equipment." I had never run a piece of equipment, but I figured it out pretty quick. It wasn't that difficult. And from that day on, I was working in the dairy every day, especially on Saturdays and weekends, until I became the swing man in the summer. So everybody takes vacation in the summer, right? And so a dairy or any kind of manufacturing facility has to have different people that step in that can run every piece of equipment in that factory. And usually they have to pay them a super salary because they have all that talent. Well, they figured out I could do all that, and I did it for a lot less money than anybody else was making because I was just a kid. So I would come in and work those swing shifts in the summer when people were on vacation and take whatever job had to be done. Had all kinds of weird hours. Would have to when I was running the plastic milk jug machine, the one that makes the plastic jugs, a mold injection machine. You know, you'd have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go in there and get that thing set up and started. So I had a good work ethic that was developed at a very early age, um, and it's just carried through. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't working.
Hmm. Know how you feel. So that's really fantastic. Now, and I appreciate all your answers and all the prep work and everything that we've done for this. And I certainly appreciate everyone that's still here from the beginning. Um, let's jump into the lightning round as we do the wrap. The
Okay,
first question is one of my favorites. I've asked this to everyone since I started the CEO success story. Since the pandemic started in March of 2020 across the US and the world, really, what's the one thing that you had to change during the pandemic that has become permanent in your life?
my posts on social media. Um, that's the biggest change. We talked about that earlier, but that's putting that information out there. In the past, I only wanted to share with the people that I actually did business with, and I've learned through the pandemic that sharing with everybody, even if my competitors get that information, is probably still good for me
Okay,
and my
that's
company.
that's pretty good. I think that that's quite interesting because some of the answers that I've gotten over the years here, last 5 years, is I found out that I like staying at home and not traveling and working from home. I missed the travel and I hated when I had to stay home and work from home. I got both of those. I think Eric Hernandez was one. Bill McLean was. The answers are really like all over the place with some people. Anyway, the second question. Thank you for that. The second question is, what tips would you give our attendees and people who watch the replay uh, to small businesses in telecom providers about AI as it relates to telecom taxes? What tips would you give them?
I don't know if this is a tip, but this is the scary part of AI. Now the government is using AI to read your tax returns. So they're able to look at your 499Q, your 499A. They're able to look at your income tax, your business income tax return, and compare the numbers off of your 499A against your what you reported as revenue on your tax form. And they're using all these data points now to figure out who to audit. And going forward, it's going to get more and more stringent in what they're looking for and what they're seeing. And that's going to open people up to more and more audits, I feel, in the probably very near future. So I'm not sure that's good for you, but that's what I see happening with AI. I see government using it before the rest of us really can get it squared away to do us to benefit us.
I think that's a fantastic. I do think that's a tip for people who don't recognize that that's going on. Uh, I do believe that AI is huge in our lives from now going forward, and I do believe that the government is going to leverage AI and some of the AI laws, which you listen to, Jonathan Marashland
Ashland, yep.
and his team. One of his attorneys for AI was on my IT Expo panel this year with Jody Gonzalez and Tony Lewis, and he provided some insight as of February, which is pretty good. So I think that it's really big, and that's a good one for people to know if they've cheated a little bit in the past. So, last question in the lightning round: what industry conference or trade show did you attend recently, and what did you learn?
As I said, I do the trade shows to get information. I last went to the Vector show, which is the SkySwitch users group meeting that was held in, I think we were down in Orlando. Yeah, we were at the Swan, at the Disney Orlando Swan Hotel. And there, we talked about the Universal Service Fund and how the rate has tripled since it first came out. But what I found really interesting, I learned at that show, and I had never looked at this before. So in the last 16 years, the rate has tripled, right? It went from 12.9 to 36.6%, not quite a triple. However, when they publish what the rate is going to be, they also publish what the needs of the program are. So what USAC does is they look at what the needs are for the next quarter. Then they look at what the reports were that they receive from people on their projections for the next quarter. And then they figure out a rate based on those needs. Well, you would expect that if it tripled, you would expect that that the needs had increased exponentially, but they haven't. The needs have only
Hmm.
gone up by less than 8% in that same 16-year period. That means that people are getting smarter and smarter about how they're contributing, and people are contributing less and less based on the fact that there's three different methodologies for calculating your contribution factor, and moving away from safe harbor to one of the two other methods that the FCC has provided is why that rate continues to grow without the amount of money they're collecting growing evenly. And that was
Okay.
a huge insight that I had never ever looked at before, never ever understood. But if you're still contributing at safe harbor rates, the only thing that that makes you safe from is an audit, which is something to be said for that. But your customers are paying a price for that, and it'd be best for you probably to change to keep your competitive edge.
Okay. Fantastic. So as we wrap here, everyone can see how much Jeff can help you. How can people find you, Jeff, if they want to engage with you as a friend or for services?
You can always email me, jlytle at billing.sbs. They were kind enough to give us those last three letters, SBS for Sandy Beaches Software. Um, we own that. You can reach out at sandybeachessoftware.com. You can reach me there. You can our website lets you get to me. You can schedule appointments with me, meetings through Zoom or just a telephone call. We have all kinds of
Can,
different
can
appointments available.
connect on LinkedIn?
You can connect on LinkedIn as well. Sure. You better
All
be in
right.
telecom if you're connecting with me. Other than that, I
I
don't
think
have any other
everyone
criteria.
is. I think
Yep.
everyone here is most and
Okay.
probably 99% of the people that watch it afterwards would be. So I want to thank you, Jeff. This has been great. I want to thank everybody for joining and hanging around till the end. If if you've read my first book, that's great. If you haven't, you should get it. The Rookie CEO. You can't make this stuff up. Jeff actually, in the early days of the CEO success, won a copy of that book for something that he
Yes.
did. I don't remember what the contest was, but he did.
Yep.
My
I think
second
it's over
book,
there. I think it's over there on the bookshelf.
okay. My second book is called What Every CEO Must Know 37 Secrets to Leading with Confidence and Power. And so that is currently at the editor. And this summer it will be published. And of course, I will share that information throughout the Cloud Voice Alliance in an email. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days. And I don't have another CEO success story webinar scheduled yet, but hopefully we'll get another one pretty soon and set somebody up. But Jeff, you've been a great guest. I think your stories are great. You know your stuff really well, and you have some fascinating stories. And again, I want to thank you and everybody else. So,
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it, Bill.
all right, you all take care. And the recording will actually be on the Cloud Voice Alliance website, and it will be on. If you're a member, you can see that. And if you're not, then you can find it on my YouTube channel. Just look up, just do a search for YouTube Beeline Bill spelled out, and you'll find it. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Bill.